Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about the best rookie wide receiver landing spots for Dynasty Fantasy Football.
Hike!
So in this episode, Joe and I are going to be talking about the top rookie wide receivers heading into this class and where we would like to see them. This is our ideal landing spot. This may not be necessarily realistic, but this is where we're hoping, because if they go somewhere really nice, Joe, then we like them all the much more.
Yep, that is for sure.
So talking about the first guy, and Joe, you might have to correct me on this one. Tetairoa McMillan, or Tet McMillan, I like to call him. I botched that up.
Yeah, I mean, Tet McMillan is the best way to go. I think it's maybe Tetairoa with the I in there. But
you're usually pretty good at that, Joe, so I'll roll with that. Coming from the Arizona Wildcats. So, Joe, what's your ideal landing spot for him?
Yeah, my ideal landing spot for him is probably going to surprise you, but I went with the Carolina Panthers. Everyone's comparing this guy to be the next Mike Evans. Well, guess what? There's Dave Canales in Carolina, who's had some experience there with Mike Evans when he had some time with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, to me, the Carolina Panthers are really lacking that true alpha wide receiver one. They do have a couple of guys, obviously Adam Thielen's there, Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker. But to me, those guys are more, supporting cast guys. Legette and Coker I see more as wide receiver twos, but they lack that, that big physical true wide receiver one. And I think it'd be interesting as, Bryce Young continues to develop to give him that true alpha wide receiver on the outside.
That's interesting. I mean, I considered it just because they don't really have a lot, but Xavier Legette is that extra receiver for them. More than likely, Tet is going to be the X, I think, from what we can tell. So we're going to be different out of the gate here, Joe. So I'm going to go with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, it might be kind of a confusing pick, but my thoughts are Geno Smith was able to support not only DK Metcalf, who's kind of a bigger receiver, played that X position for the Seahawks, but also guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tyler Lockett over their careers while Geno Smith was in Seattle. The receiver in Las Vegas is a wasteland. I mean, Jacoby Myers is the best guy they got, and after that, they don't really have anybody else. Now, they do have Brock Bowers, but, to me, bringing in a guy like Tet McMillan, he then gets a great amount of target share there in that offense. And let's not forget Tom Brady as a minority owner of the Raiders. He obviously had an affinity for Mike Evans and what he was able to do for him and that offense. So I could see where it would make some sense for McMillan to head over to the Las Vegas Raiders. The question is, who's the quarterback after Geno Smith? That's not necessarily the best thing for his future as far as dynasty value goes, but at least for the short term, I think he could be relevant. And if he can get out the gate and be successful, that's only going to help him in his career.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was kind of the tough part. A lot of these wide receiver needy teams also have some quarterbacks that aren't necessarily there for the long term. Or, if you think about a team, even Patriots or whatever, it's they have a lot of young guys, but how does he really fit in there? I saw people saying Patriots were a good landing spot for him. I chose to kind of avoid that, but so I don't hate the Las Vegas Raiders. I do think that makes sense.
I did too. I think that too many people, you're on the train, but I think too many are just over the moon about Drake May, just based on limited action of what we saw from him. And as a result, they think he's the next coming of Josh Allen. In my mind, I'm like Lee Corso, not so fast. I just don't see it right now. And so I held off for the Patriots as well. But time will tell, see where he ends up going. Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. Let's go to our next guy, wide receiver Luther Burden of the Missouri Tigers. Joe, where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, I'd like to see him go to the San Francisco 49ers. They just traded Deebo Samuel, and why not replace him with a guy that they compare to Deebo Samuel, and really would like to just see him with a creative, at the very least, just see him with a creative mind and an offensive coordinator. offensive-minded coach, whether it's offensive coordinator or head coach even, but, Kyle Shanahan just knows how to utilize a guy with his skill set, get him into that open space, and find ways to let him be that playmaker. So I think 49ers would be an interesting spot.
Well, Joe, we're back to our ways back in the running back episode. I think that San Francisco 49ers would be a great landing spot for Luther Bird. I mean, at the end of the day, I view him as Deebo Samuel light. And as a result, you saw what Kyle Shanahan was able to do with Deebo Samuel as a chess piece in that offense. I was kind of nervous about the receiving options around him, but at the same time, they've always kind of had players, and Debo was amongst those players as well. So they were able to give him volume and find space for him. So who knows about Brandon Ayuk coming back from the ACL? Seems like maybe based on reports, 49ers are kind of having some buyer's remorse of giving that contract to Brandon Ayuk. And then you've got Ricky Pearsall is unproven, and Juwan Jennings I'm not that scared of. So I agree with you. I think with their burden to the Niners, I think it can make a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's just kind of, it's interesting. We went to the same place, but, I think it's easy just because he's, possibly the next Deebo Samuel type of guy.
So next guy we're going to be talking about here, wide receiver Matthew Golden of the Texas Longhorns. Joe, where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, I went with the Dallas Cowboys for Golden. They really need a number 2 wide receiver next to CeeDee Lamb. And, this is a speedy guy. I feel like Jerry Jones likes those guys with the speed and the down the field threats. So with their lack of options at the wide receiver position outside of CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott coming back, be interesting to see how things go with the new offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer there. But I think Dak Prescott will be able to get it down the field to Golden.
So I'm going to go with the Miami Dolphins. Jalen Waddle can't stay healthy. The guy seems like he's injured all the time. It seems like Tyreek Hill, maybe he's just trying to get more attention these days, or it's actually legitimate that he might be leaving soon. Is that? He talked about retiring at an early age. As we know, the Miami Dolphins heavily rely on speed. Honestly, a lot of teams really want that speed element. Everybody wants that player who can take the top off of a defense.
Yep.
But we've seen, Mike McDaniel and that offense really know how to use these speed guys. Sometimes they can have the greatest speed in the world, but it seems like they're just situational players and they're not really used all that much. So I have a lot of confidence that Miami would know how to use them. Maybe he wouldn't have an immediate impact until maybe Jalen Waddle get injured or, Tyreek Hill gets, retires. So this is more, hey, in 2 years, 3 years, he starts to mature into that role. Hopefully McDaniel would still be the coach for his sake. But I think the Miami Dolphins can make a lot of sense.
Yeah, Dolphins make sense. You talk about they always draft all the fast guys, and it's like it's like a track meet there in Miami. It'll be interesting that, rumor has it that potentially Tyreek Hill could be a draft day trade. We'll keep an eye on that. And if that really happens, then it definitely opens a spot up on that roster at the wide receiver position.
All right, so let's go on to our next player, Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. Joe, where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, I went with the Houston Texans. I'd like to see him paired up with his former teammate, C.J. Stroud. He had one of his best seasons back with the Ohio State Buckeyes when C.J. Stroud was there. And I know they signed Christian Kirk, but, with Tank Dell going down, I feel like they still need another wide receiver there. And with Emeka Egbuka's skill set, I think he's going to be best served out of the slot. So even with Kirk, Nico Collins on the roster, I think they could really utilize Egbuka in the slot in that offense.
Well, I agree with you, Joe. I also went with the Houston Texans for Emeka Egbuka. You've got that familiarity with Stroud and him, and they really need somebody else. Nico Collins obviously, really stepped up, was able to do really well this past season. But when Stephon Diggs went down, now Tank Dell went down, that offense needs a lot of help. So bringing in a guy like that, who, like you said, Stroud has a lot of familiarity with, I think makes a ton of sense. And he really can be a security blanket for that offense.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I know C.J. Stroud really wanted Tank Dell, was kind of pounding the table for him on draft day. They ended up doing it. Wonder if C.J. Stroud would be able to do some of the same things to get Egbuka there.
It's definitely possible. I could definitely see it. Let's talk about our next player, wide receiver Tre Harris of Ole Miss. Where would you like to see him go, Joe?
Yeah, I ended up going with the Los Angeles Rams for Tre Harris, just because this guy is an elite route runner, and I feel like that's kind of what Sean McVay would look for. They moved on from Cooper Kupp. I know they brought in Devontae Adams, have Puka Nacua as the number one wide receiver there, but I feel like this is a guy with his route running. He's got the ability to be a deep threat as well, an explosive player, and be excited to get Tre Harris on a team that's got a creative offensive mind.
So I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans for this one, which might be a unique, choice because we don't know who the quarterback is going to be. But at the end of the day, they only have Calvin
Most
Ridley
likely
really
Cam Ward, but
it's mostly going to be Cam Ward. And when you think about it, Calvin Ridley is really the only wide receiver on the roster of note. I mean, Treylon Burks is definitely a bust. So you bring a guy in like Tre Harris, who, if he comes in with, more than likely Cam Ward, these two kind of get to grow together in that offense. Brian Callahan is offensive coordinator. And hey, look, they had a lot of success in Tennessee when they drafted another receiver, second-round pick out of Ole Miss, and A.J. Brown. I think Harris has brings some of the – I think some have said that he has similar traits to A.J. Brown. He has that physicality. And he's able to, like you said, he's a great route runner. So I like that. I like that option for the Tennessee Titans. And like you said, really a lot of these teams that really need a receiver also need a quarterback. So it kind of makes it tough because this is not an established quarterback throwing them the ball.
Yeah, that's kind of. I mean, Titans do make sense for one of these wide receivers. They're probably going to take one. It's just tough to call it like a best or an ideal landing spot just with a rookie quarterback coming in.
All right, so heading into our last player, and no, we're not talking about Travis Hunter or leaving him for our IDP landing spots, but we're going to be talking about Jayden Higgins of Iowa State. So what are we thinking for him, Joe? Where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, I'd like to see him go to the Green Bay Packers. Christian Watson went down, tore his ACL at the end of last year. And to me, they really just need a true number one wide receiver. They got a lot of guys that Jaden Reed and guys like that Dontavian Wicks even, who really just, they all are kind of similar. And Christian Watson was the one guy who was kind of bigger, had the ability to take the top off the defense. Well, this is another big guy, but also runs really well. Impressed with his 40 time for especially at his size. So I think the Packers and pairing him with Jordan Love would be an interesting landing spot.
So I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys. You talked about them earlier, Joe. I mean, they don't really have a second receiver. Jalen Tolbert is there. Brandon Cooks, who was a trial run for him, didn't work out. So, what I like about Higgins is that, you saw him get involved quite a bit in the red zone, and they really need another option outside CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is the guy, and they need to take some pressure off him. And, I think they probably don't want to address the position in round one, but I could definitely see them addressing it in round two. It seems like that's where Higgins is going to go. So I can see a lot of value there. And again, I think he brings a different dimension to that offense that they don't have. And as a result, I think that could heavily utilize him.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's another good landing spot that makes a ton of sense. I mean, as I framed the argument for, Cowboys definitely need a true wide receiver too there to help CeeDee Lamb in that offense.
So that does it for this episode. We talked about the best rookie wide receiver landing spots according to Joe and I for Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you enjoyed this episode, we've been talking about running backs and quarterbacks in our most recent episodes. Go check those out. And we've got tight ends and IDP left to go. Thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time.